and the people had to pull him out. So, he wasn't never just that good. God was that good, and God selected him just like he chose us. We ain't that good, right? But God still chooses us, right? So God chose him for his people, for his purpose. It wasn't because Saul was so good. It was a need it was a need that had to be met in the kingdom, and God chose Saul to fill it. Okay? Just like there's a need in the kingdom today, and God will choose you to fill it. Okay? So he, like I said, God been God, and he's in a position. And their assignment for Saul and Jonathan was to go out and help free the other people who were in captivity, right? So, of course, Israel is big. It's not just a small place, right? But there are still people of God who were in bondage, who were being oppressed, right? So when God put him into this position, it was with an assignment, okay? So God, who he calls, he equips, he qualifies. So if God puts you in a position and gives you an assignment, he will give you what you need to carry that assignment out. This is why he tells us, go courageously, fear not. He's like, okay, if I put you there, I gave you what you need. What you gotta be scared of? I'm powerful. I'm limitless, right? I am the plug. You get what I'm saying? So in our mindset, we should be okay. Well, let's go. Right? God got me. He got me here. We're going to do this. We're going to rock it out for his purpose and his glory. That should be the mindset, right? But sometimes things shift. Okay? So he got his 3,000 men and everything, and they out there doing the work of the Lord, what they were called to do. It says now, in verse 3, it says, Jonathan smote the garrison, which is a cluster of army people, a garrison of the Philistines that was in Gibeah. And the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout the land of Israel, saying, let the Hebrews hear. All Israel heard the news that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines. Who did it? No, he didn't. Jonathan smote that garrison, right? But when Saul decided to let everybody know some things from the pop off, he made it seem like he did it. Right? Right? So out the gate, right? And we know this from past studies. We haven't got all the way to that. We'll get to that today. But Saul had an issue with his image in people's eyes was more important than his image in God's eyes, right? And that's what one of the main ways he sold himself short, because he was so caught up with what people are gonna think. I need to please the people. I need to do this. I need to do that. That he started ignoring instruction from God, right? And in the end, that's what shifted. So we see in the beginning, Jonathan out there walking in God. Jonathan, as we will see, is fearless. He out there doing what God empowered him to do, right? But yeah, Saul wasn't doing that. But when the word got out, he gave himself that credit, right? So it says, so all of Israel heard that Saul did it, right? And also Israel had become odious to the Philistines. The people were then summoned to Saul at Gilgal. So now they understand, oh, we got some beef going on, right? And naturally, and this is just for us, right? This is a spiritual warfare, and God uses these human battles to show us our spiritual battles, right? And so when we go in God and we're on God's side, you become a audience, or like a what's the antagonist for the enemy, right? But if you go in God, you got the dub automatically, right? So there shouldn't be no fear, because God he over them. He's over Satan. You know what I'm saying? So they shouldn't have been fearful at all, because we in God. And what God has done so far, from every battle they've had since they've left Egypt, God has always showed up for them. No matter how many of them it was, no matter how big the enemy was, no matter where they were, what resources they did or did not have, God showed up, and he showed out all the time, right? Numbers didn't matter to him. All he want to know is, you're going to show up in me and I got it. That's it. For us, that's all you need to know. Are you going to show up in me? If you show up in me, I'm going to take over. I got you, right? So news gets out, right? It says, now the Philistines assembled to fight with Israel. 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen in abundance. And they came up and camped in Michmash, east of Beth Haven. So the enemy done pulled up on them. And they pulled up in numbers the same way when the enemy come for us. Well, he ain't coming weak. Right? Right. The enemy know how God roll. Right. This is why, when they have in previous texts, they have the ark of God, they're like, okay, God's presence in here. They always got fearful because they knew if God showed up, it don't matter how many people we got, we're going to lose. Right? So they pull up. Now, how many does Saul have? 3,000. Honey, they got twice as many horsemen and 10 times as many chariots. Right? So it says, when the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, which is like a standoff, the people were hard pressed. Then the people hid themselves in caves and in thickets and in cliffs and in cellars, and they running, right? So the first way that you sell yourself short is you don't have the right energy when you show up, right? You already have the energy that you're gonna lose. You running scared, you're frantic, you're hard pressed, right? But why are you hard pressed if you know you got God? Why are you hard pressed and why are you running and why are you doing this? And now in our book, it talks about how they kind of feed off the energy of the leader, right? And if Saul was more steadfast and grounded and anchored in God, he could have been like, oh no, y'all, God got us because he's been having us, right? This is where he should have stepped in and encouraged his people, right? But as you see, that didn't happen, right? So because of the running, right, you don't see God if you don't show up. You're not going to see God move for you if you're not present to see him move for you, right? So they running. So you don't even get the chance to see God show up in their battle because you're already scared, right? He show up with you. He a spirit. So if we not there, who's going to take him in, right? So they running. Wrong energy, they running. It says also some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead. But as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. So they all scared. Everybody's scared, but they say they in God. Right? This is God's army. This is God's people. God being guided. And this is what he said, when you put somebody else in God's position. Right? God was the king. They didn't have to worry about this stuff when they let God be the king, right? But when you put somebody else in a position that's for God, well, you get what humans give you, which is fear, doubt, regret, a change of heart, flip-flopping, up and down. We are unstable, right? That's why you can't put nobody in God's position because we're not solid enough to be in God's position, right? So they go fear and dread. Fear, they scared, they trembling. It says, now he waited 7 days, okay? According to the appointed time set by Samuel. Now remember, he done told everybody that he smoked the garrison and now they in a strait. So of course, Samuel is the priest, he gets wind. He got his own priestly duties to do, and everybody kind of get in a position to do what God has put them in position to do. Samuel is not excluded. So he lets him know, hey, 7 days, I'm going to pull up. We're going to do the offerings. We're going to do this because that was their custom. We don't do the offerings. We don't go into battle without consulting with God, making sure that we right in him and that we're prepared to let him do what he going to do, right? That's what those sacrifices were for. This is ushering God into the situation so he can step in and defeat the enemy, right? So he gets instruction. And another way we set ourselves short is by not following directions, right? We got to follow directions. If you want what God has promised you, you got to follow him to get to that. You have to let him lead because we don't know how to get there. We don't know how. We don't know when. We don't know what to put where, who to put. We don't know because we don't see everything, right? But God is infinite in his knowledge and his foreknowledge. So when we